They made her wait like she was nothing, like her time had no value, like her presence didn't matter at all, and the worst part was, no one even looked at her twice as she sat there quietly, holding her bag close, listening to the ticking clock that seemed louder with every passing second, her eyes calm but carrying a weight no one in that room could understand, because if they had known who she really was, if they had known the truth behind her silence, everything would have been different from the very beginning, but they didn't, and so the story began with quiet humiliation. She had arrived early, earlier than anyone else, dressed simply, no flashy jewelry, no signs of power, just a neat coat and tired eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen struggle and learned to stay silent through it, and when she walked into the reception, the woman behind the desk barely looked up, just pointed toward a chair with a careless gesture, her voice cold, "Wait there," as if she were speaking to someone unimportant, someone replaceable, someone invisible, and the woman obeyed without a word, sitting down gently, placing her bag beside her feet, folding her hands together as if holding herself steady from something deeper than just the moment. Minutes passed, then an hour, then more. People walked in and out, some greeted warmly, others rushed through doors that remained closed for her, and each time someone arrived after her and was taken in before her, she felt the sting, but she did not react, her face remained composed, her breathing slow, because she had learned long ago that reacting too soon often cost more than staying quiet, and still, the receptionist continued to ignore her, occasionally glancing at her with a faint look of annoyance, as if her mere presence was inconvenient. Behind the reception desk, a few employees stood together, whispering, their eyes drifting toward her now and then, judging quietly, assuming she was just another applicant, maybe desperate, maybe unqualified, someone who didn't belong in a place like this, their expressions carrying that subtle arrogance that comes from believing you are above someone else, and among them stood a man, sharply dressed, confident, his posture strong, his voice controlled, the kind of person who was used to being listened to, respected, even feared, and he looked at her briefly before turning away with disinterest, already deciding she was not worth his time. The woman sitting there noticed everything, the whispers, the looks, the dismissive gestures, but she said nothing, because her silence was not weakness, it was patience, and patience had carried her through years of hardship, through nights when she had nothing, through days when no one believed in her, through moments when giving up would have been easier, but she never did, and now, sitting in that room, being treated like she didn't belong, she felt that old ache again, that familiar sadness that comes when people judge you without knowing your story. Her phone buzzed softly in her bag, but she didn't check it, she kept her gaze forward, steady, focused, as if she was reminding herself why she was there, why she had come without announcing herself, why she had chosen to walk in like a stranger instead of someone important, and deep inside, there was a quiet hope, not for recognition, not for apology, but for truth to reveal itself in its own time, because she believed that people show their real selves when they think no one is watching, and today, she was watching everything. The man in the suit, the one who had dismissed her earlier, approached the desk, speaking in a low but firm voice, discussing schedules, meetings, numbers, his tone carrying authority, and the receptionist nodded quickly, eager to please him, her attitude completely different from how she treated the woman waiting, respectful, almost nervous, and as he spoke, his eyes briefly landed on the seated woman again, and this time he frowned slightly, as if her continued presence annoyed him. Is she still waiting? He asked, and the receptionist shrugged. She didn't have an appointment, she replied, her voice casual, almost dismissive, and he nodded, as if that explained everything, as if that justified the neglect. Another hour passed, the room grew quieter, the whispers faded, but the tension remained, and still she waited, her back straight, her expression calm, though inside, the weight of the moment pressed against her chest, reminding her of every time she had been overlooked, every time she had been underestimated, and yet, she did not stand up, she did not complain, she did not demand attention, because she knew something they didn't, she knew that patience reveals truth in a way anger never can. At one point, a younger employee approached her hesitantly, offering a glass of water, his eyes uncertain, as if he felt something was wrong but didn't fully understand it, and she smiled softly, thanking him with a quiet voice, a voice that carried kindness despite everything, and that small moment of humanity stood out in a room filled with indifference, but even then, no one questioned why she was still there, no one thought to ask who she was beyond the surface. The man in the suit eventually stepped out of his office again, checking his watch, clearly irritated, and this time he walked directly toward her, his steps firm, his expression controlled but cold. "You've been here long enough," he said, his tone sharp. "If you don't have an appointment, you should leave," and the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward them, waiting, watching, expecting her to either apologize or walk away, because in their minds, she had no reason to stay, no right to be there. And for a moment, she looked up at him, meeting his gaze with calm eyes that held something he couldn't quite read. "I'm waiting for the right time," she said softly, her voice steady, not defensive, not afraid, just certain, and that answer only seemed to irritate him more, because it didn't fit the role he had already assigned to her. It didn't match his expectation of submission, and he let out a quiet breath, shaking his head slightly. "This is not how things work here," he replied, his tone firm, authoritative. "You need to follow proper procedures," and still, she did not argue, she simply nodded once, as if acknowledging his words without accepting them. He turned away, dismissing her again, convinced he had settled the matter, convinced she would leave soon, and the receptionist smirked faintly, exchanging glances with the others, their judgment now fully formed, their assumptions complete, and yet, she remained seated, unmoved, her patience unbroken, her silence stronger than any argument she could have made. Time continued to pass, the building slowly transitioning into a quieter state, meetings ending, people preparing to leave, and just as the receptionist began shutting down her system, a sudden shift occurred. The main doors opened again, but this time, the atmosphere changed instantly. A senior executive entered, followed by two assistants, their presence commanding attention, and everyone straightened, voices softened, movements became more careful, more respectful, because this was someone important, someone whose opinion mattered. The man in the suit quickly approached, greeting him with a polite smile, his earlier irritation replaced by professionalism, and they began discussing something urgent, something that required immediate attention, and as they spoke, the executive's gaze moved across the room, briefly scanning everything, until it stopped on the woman who was still sitting quietly, and in that moment, something shifted, something subtle but undeniable. He paused mid-conversation, his expression changing, his posture adjusting slightly, and without another word, he walked past everyone, directly toward her, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath, confusion spreading across faces, whispers beginning again, but this time filled with uncertainty instead of judgment, and when he reached her, he gave a small, respectful nod. "We've been expecting you," he said calmly, and the silence that followed felt heavier than anything before. The man in the suit froze, his expression tightening, his confidence shaken for the first time, and the receptionist looked down quickly, her earlier attitude gone, replaced by a sudden realization that something was very wrong, and slowly, the woman stood up, adjusting her coat, her movements calm, composed, as if nothing had changed for her at all, because in truth, nothing had. She had known who she was from the beginning. "I wanted to see how things are here," she said softly, her voice now carrying a quiet authority that no one could ignore, "and now I have," and her words were not loud, not aggressive, but they landed with a weight that filled the room, and the man in the suit stepped forward, his voice uncertain for the first time. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize," but she raised her hand gently, stopping him before he could finish. "It's not about realizing," she replied, her tone calm, but firm. "It's about how you treat people when you think they don't matter." And no one spoke after that, because there was nothing left to say. The truth had already revealed itself, not through confrontation, but through patience, through quiet observation, through a silence that had allowed everyone to show exactly who they were. And in that moment, the power shifted completely, not through anger, not through force, but through dignity, through restraint, through the strength of someone who chose to wait, to watch, and to let justice arrive on its own. And as she walked past them, no longer ignored, no longer dismissed, the lesson stayed behind, heavy and unforgettable, a reminder that the way you treat someone who seems unimportant says everything about who you truly are.